Hello, everybody. This is Bill Galic, and I'll be your instructor for the Introduction to Social Work 206 for the new semester. I'm very privileged to be able to present this material to you. This is a class that I've actually been able to teach a number of times over the years. I have been an instructor at the University of Alaska Anchorage and in a couple of different campuses for something over 25 years now. I originally began teaching at Kenai Peninsula College, and of course in a classroom setting there. And while teaching at KPC, taught sociology, social work, and human services courses. Over the years, as we began to develop online teaching at KPC, some of my courses were more or less adopted by the University of Alaska Anchorage School of Social Work, and I'm now teaching pretty exclusively for them, usually introductory courses, although occasionally some other social work courses as well. And so I'm happy to present this material to you, and I hope that the years of my own experience will be of benefit to you and to the course content as the semester goes along. One or two of you have the great fortune or misfortune, depending upon how you want to see it, of actually taking two classes with me, as I'm also offering Social Work 106. And so much of this material in this presentation, the entire lecture, in fact, is going to be repetitious to you because the two courses are really kind of set up pretty close to each other. I think it will be of value to you, however, to kind of bear with me and listen once again in this lecture, just because there's going to be a few things here and there that are different from class to class, and I don't want you to miss any important information along the way. But forgive me as I go through a little bit of my resume for the other students who haven't had my course before or haven't listened to any other lectures from me, just so that they're aware a little bit about what it is that is in my own professional career that I bring to this teaching experience. I got my bachelor's degree from Michigan State University way back in 1974, School of Social Work, and then in 1983 I got my MSW from Florida State University. During the years that I practiced social work in Alaska, which was about 28 years altogether, I got my license as a clinical social worker there. But after I retired from full-time social work in 2014 and moved out of state, I'm now living in Northeast Indiana. I let my Alaska social work license lapse, and so at the present time, my ACSW initials represent my certification through the National Association of Social Workers, the Academy of Certified Social Workers. Just to tell you that NASW thinks I know what I'm doing, I think. It's possible if I go back to work down here in Indiana, which may or may not occur, I'll get licensed in the state of Indiana. But at this time, I'm not currently licensed, although I was for many years. After well, after I got my bachelor's degree at Michigan State, I spent a couple of years working in public assistance and food stamp certification programs. Then a little over 4 years, I believe, in child protection, carrying a caseload in Central Florida. Then moved over and worked in residential care and treatment with children and adolescents at the Orange County Great Oaks Village, which is a shelter and long-term foster care and semi-independent living program facility, as well as a behavior treatment program for ungovernable teenagers, and worked in various aspects of all of those programs during the 7 years or so that I worked for that organization. In 1987, I moved to Alaska and went to work as an outpatient therapist with the mental health center in Alaska. With the mental health center in Kenai at Central Peninsula Counseling Services, now PCHS, and then in 1995 moved over to work with the Division of Family and Youth Services, now the Office of Children's Services, and I supervised really at one time or another all the functions of the Office of Children's Services, from initial report to adoption of children, but focused primarily upon supervision of the child protection investigations during much of my career with OCS. And as I said earlier, I retired from that work in 2014. Throughout this time, I've had the privilege to teach for UAA and have taught something like 64 semesters, 2 or 3 classes, occasionally one class a semester, in addition to my full-time work. And so I've stayed pretty busy with this. And now that I've retired, I'm continuing to teach and really enjoy the opportunity of interacting with up and coming social workers and offering what I might to them to help them get launched in their career in the right direction. You have my contact information here in this slide. You see there's 2 email addresses. The university does prefer that we communicate through the edu email address that the university provides. However, I can also tell you that my Comcast.net address is private because no one else lives in the home with me here, and so you don't have to worry about other people seeing your emails to me. I think probably the edu email is more secure as far as the texts are concerned and everything, so you may take that into consideration, but you don't have to worry about privacy as far as I'm concerned running to me at my Comcast address. And I'll tell you that I do look at Comcast more frequently, the Comcast email inbox much more frequently than I do the university email, although I do try to make sure I check that regularly. There's also 2 phone numbers here. One of them is my cell. I've kept my Alaska number there for those of you that don't have good long distance calling plans, but also have a hardline phone that here in Indiana that you can phone also. Both of them have voicemail. If I don't answer, you can leave a message. Please keep in mind, I am in the Eastern time zone. And so I'm 4 hours ahead of you in Alaska. And so if you're calling me late at night, you're likely to be getting me out of bed. And I just don't recommend that if you can help it. So just keep the time difference in mind if you do try to communicate with me in real time. I'm also available because I do have Apple products here. I'm also available to meet with you in a video format through FaceTime, or also I could upload Skype and meet with you over Skype if you want to. I have Facebook Messenger has a video program now that's pretty decent, and so there's lots of different ways. If you really want to kind of have a face-to-face with me, we can do that as well. Just let me know. So first we'll talk a little bit about what textbooks you'll be working out of for this course. I've got my eyes open always for other textbooks and trying to get ones that probably present the best idea about what social work is all about. And I have to tell you that although the Glicken text, this text kind of gives a superficial look at many different areas of practice, it has the advantage, as opposed to other textbooks, of really talking about many more areas of practice kind of more specifically than other textbooks do. And so I like this. There's well over 20 chapters in this book, and we're not going to read every chapter. We're going to read most of them, but there's not a lot of jargon in it. Glicken has a social worker perspective on things, and so you'll notice that his ideas about things generally lean to the left, and that's what generally social workers do, and so that's okay. And I think you'll find this book to be useful. I'm waiting for a new edition to come out. I haven't seen one come up yet, but it should be happening pretty soon. So right now we're using the second edition that was published about 6 years ago. I think you'll find this book to be very informative, and he really kind of scrapes all the corners in the field to try to find the different areas of practice for social workers. And one of the things that's remarkable about this, as you look through the table of contents in this book, is just all the different kinds of things you can do as a social worker, and all the different fields of practice. And really is that one of the things that makes this profession such a great profession. And my dad grew up during the Great Depression. I think became into adulthood during not long after the Great Depression, or not long before the Great Depression, and so he managed to keep his job. He was working for the government, for the post office, and managed to keep his job through the Depression, and retired from that job many years later. And I was his youngest of 5 boys, and he told me, when you get a job, you stick with that job and stay with that job. Your employer's going to take care of you. You'll have a good retirement and all those kinds of things. And in his day and with his employer, that was true at the time. But if you're following the news now, there's lots of different ways that employers treat employees now. And in fact, a lot of times you don't even get hired as employees anymore. You get hired on contract, and you get hired to work part-time, and people are hobbling together full-time careers by working for two or three different employers part-time. When you have a contract as opposed to being hired as an employee, that oftentimes means you don't have retirement plans and even hospitalization insurance coverage. So you have to get all those things on your own. And you may be making more money because you're on a contract than an employee would, but you don't have all those other benefits. And so in the end, maybe you lose in the end, you know. But I suffice to say that. Employers don't seem to have the same dedication to their employees in general that they did in my father's day. And so the notion of sticking with one employer and staying in one job all the time probably is outdated anymore. And that doesn't mean that it can't happen, and that there aren't some good employers out there that offer great benefit packages and will take care of you if you work with them but diligently. But that's not a given anymore. And so I think one of the things that's great about social work is that social workers are involved in so many different areas in our society that you can move around and do different things, and it really helps you stay fresh and engaged, as you change your focus throughout your work. Now, when I talked about my career a little bit ago, I worked in residential treatment, I worked in public assistance, I've worked in outpatient mental health, I've worked in child protection in a couple of different states. There's a variety of different perspectives in social work, but the one common thread that ran through all of those was that it involved children and families, and so I stayed fresh by moving from employer to employer in a couple of different areas of the nation, but I also kept building on the consistency, and my career was the building on my work with children and families, and so I could accumulate some wisdom along the way, I guess. And so that's just different kinds of ways you can approach your practice in social work. But as I say, this text really kind of shows you all the different areas where, as a social worker, you might be engaged in your career. Now, the one drawback to that book is that he really doesn't talk a lot about. I mean, he does deal with social work skills and the importance of building on your relationship with your client and how to go about doing that, but he doesn't go into it in very much depth. And the second book, Your Reader, Working with People by Joanne Levine, does that. And I really like this book because it really kind of talks about your relationship with your client and all the different features and how it impacts you and how you impact your client, ways to engage resistant clients, ways to, to work with hostile clients and different kinds of things like that. In the social work profession, one of the things that we often don't get trained in, and there ought to be courses in this specifically, most of the time you're working with, often at least, you're working with involuntary clients, people who are brought to you because you work for the government or some agency that is funded by the government to deal with particular intractable problems. They're your client because they've got big problems, and oftentimes they're your client as a social worker because they won't go to get help on their own, or they can't afford the help that other people are getting from various counselors and psychologists and behavioral interventionists and those kinds of things. And so you can bet that you're going to be working with clients who really don't want to work with you, and you need to develop those skills. You need to know what those skills are you have to have in order to engage those clients and work productively together. And this book begins, and it just begins to, but it begins to open up the discussion about that. And I really like this book and think, along with the Glick and text, gives you a good introduction to what social work is all about. You're in the Blackboard course, and so I hope you found the syllabus there. What I want you to do is be sure to print that out and have a hard copy available at all times. Now, syllabus is more or less of a contract between you and me about what to expect, and what I expect of you as well. So be sure you read it and be sure you understand everything that's there, because you're responsible for the material inside that syllabus. There is a bit of a dynamic element to a syllabus just because sometimes time affects what goes on in the class, and maybe some alterations will have to occur in the syllabus. That won't be major ones, but minor ones. And if at any point I do have to make any changes in the syllabus, it'll be noted in Blackboard and at that particular panel in your Blackboard course, and I'll also be sure to let you know. But the syllabus, it really kind of spells out what the course is all about and what you can expect in the next 15 or 16 weeks. Here's how you get your points in this class, and altogether there are 670 points. That does not include some points you can earn as a sort of bonus points to kind of bump up your point total a little bit. And we're going to go through these just one by one right now. So, and the grading scale is just standard grading scale in the university, I believe. As you can see here, pretty standard 90, 80, 70, 60 being the cutoff for your grades. I mention oftentimes when I get to this point also, I have students worried because Blackboard tells them sometimes that they have a point percentage that means they're getting a D when they think they're doing A work, and I would encourage you to ignore the percentage that Blackboard says you have, because sometimes it is considering things that you don't have to do, where you can earn points but you don't have to, like your bonus points, for instance. And I think sometimes it also looks at projects that haven't been assigned yet and includes them in your point totals. I'm not sure. But what you need to do is just keep track of the points you're earning and compare that to the points you could have earned, and that will tell you what your percentage is if you're concerned about that. So 50 points for participation and attendance, and this isn't a face-to-face, obviously, when we don't classroom setting. I mean, and we don't get together, on our computers or anything. This is entirely asynchronous. So when I say attendance, what I mean is how often are you checking into Blackboard, and are you doing so regularly? That is something Blackboard tells me. It tracks when you check in, and I'll use that oftentimes in determining how many points you get here. But if you're participating every week and in all the items that you're supposed to do, and you're staying abreast of things, you can figure you're going to get your full 50 points here. Let me mention to you, in fact, while we're on this topic, about something that I told you in the introductory email I sent out a few days ago. I hope you saw it. This is an online course. We don't have regular meetings scheduled meetings on over the computer or in person where you have to sit down together. And so this gives you a lot of flexibility about when you address this work. Now, if you've taken old-fashioned correspondence courses, many of those classes you can just kind of do the work whenever and have it all turned in by the deadline, and you get your grade, and you have minimal interaction with other students, if any at all, and you have really minimal interaction with your instructor probably. This is not a correspondence course at all. This is an e-learning course, an online course, and you are going to have interactions with other students, not face to face, probably, but in within Blackboard, and you're going to be interacting with me. All of that is going to happen regularly. And so this is why I say to you that the flexibility you have with this class really isn't a flexibility throughout the semester. While students have done this, I highly do not recommend that you wait 3 or 4 weeks and then spend a weekend catching up on 3 or 4 weeks worth of material. The flexibility you have in this course should be considered to be flexibility within the week. Every Sunday morning, very early, a new learning unit is going to open up for the week that will give you your new readings and activities, the new lectures, and have a new discussion board question, a new journal for you to post, all that. And your flexibility in order to get that done should be considered to be within that week. So from Sunday through Saturday night. And some of that work is going to drag out into the next week, and you'll see why in a minute, but please try to think of this as getting all the work done every week within that week, and you decide during the week when you want to do it. So, because it's important for you to stay abreast of things. And one of the reasons is because in your discussion board posts, every week you're going to have one, occasionally two, questions or things to comment on. And this is a discussion board, and so you will post a response to that question. This should be done after you've done the readings and the lectures, that you go in and do the discussion board. And your response really should be about 150 words or more. That's a very short response requirement. I hope you'll write more than that. But you respond to the question, and then within a few days later, you go back and you read some of your other classmates' responses to that same question and comment on theirs. Or maybe some of the other students have commented on your post and you respond to that, those kinds of things. But to get full credit for your discussion board each week, that's 10 points each week, you have to make your original post of about 150 words or more, and then respond to two classmates' posts. And those responses don't have to be 150 words long, but they should be something meaningful. So not just yes or no or I agree or I don't agree, but really kind of responding to what your classmate says in a way that shows that you're thinking about what the classmate said and what your thoughts are about that, or your feelings are about that, or what your experiences are with that. Make it a meaningful, substantial response. Might go over 150 words, maybe not, but only your original post has that length requirement. So discussion boards sometimes have a reputation for being kind of a sort of a pro forma thing, where you go in and you respond, and the instructor counts the number of responses and you get credit because of that. And I'm also, yes, I'm looking at the number of responses you have, but I'm also looking at what you're writing and making sure that it has some meaning, some purpose to it. And if it doesn't, you're going to lose some points on that post. So let's say, week three's, I don't know what week I have here. This is probably week 7, maybe, up here. Opens on Sunday, October 8th. The discussion board question is presented to you then. You have a week to do your readings and listen to lectures and get back in and respond to the discussion board, so that should be your original response. 150 words or more should be posted by the following Sunday night. And then within a few days after that, by Thursday of that following week after that, you should have gone back in and responded to at least 2 of your classmates' posts as well. Got that? So we're talking 10 or 11 days after the discussion board question was first posed. After that, the following weekend, when everybody should have been in there and did their work, I will go in and grade it. So the discussion boards, usually there's about a 2-week delay in seeing a grade once it's first posted. So your original post and 2 responses give you 10 points. Just a note that this is public, not outside the class, but within the class, so that anything you write in the discussion boards is going to be visible to everybody else in the class, of course, including me, but also all your classmates. Every now and then there's a second discussion board, and you'll be able to earn some bonus points by responding to the second discussion board. Your current events post is called the weekly Scrapbook in the learning unit each week. And what you're doing here is you're looking for something in the media: newspaper, television, radio, journals, magazines, online, legitimate. Please make sure you have legitimate sources online, and respond to whatever. First of all, summarize the article, and then write a 150-word response, a minimum 150 words again, your reaction to that news item, whatever that might be. And the news item should be related to social work profession, to civil rights, to social welfare, those kinds of things that social workers are concerned about. I don't really want news items about, traffic accidents or, somebody killing somebody, unless there's some sort of social work element in this. So keep that in mind. Now, this could also be legislators cutting the education budget, or it could be, something about the president pardoning somebody, that kind of thing, where there are, again, implications involving social welfare and social work and civil rights, those things. So keep it pointed. Now, the difference here is this is something that's going to be just between you and me. And so this gives you an opportunity to write something that maybe is a little more personal about yourself, or is a little more direct about things than you might say in a in a more open forum. If you had something you wanted to talk with me about privately, for instance, and again, kind of related to this social work topic, of course, this is the place to do that. And so this is a private post between you and me, unlike the discussion boards. So this is each of these is worth 10 points. So again, there's another chance for another 140 points here, or 280 points between this and the discussion boards during the entire semester altogether. There is an item in this week's course content about how your posts earn points that explain how to get full credit for your discussion boards, and also for your journal posts, your e-scrapbook posts. And I believe in this week's content there is an example of what I consider to be the appropriate format for journals. That is, the title of the article, the source where the article came from, and the date, and then a short, brief summary of what the news item is, and then 150 words or more. The student's response to that item, whatever it is. So look at that and try to conform your journal posts around that format. There's also an item on your course menu called Board and Journal Grading Guidelines that has those all of that information plus a little bit more. And I would encourage you to look at that, click on that, and read through that area within the next few days. The group project is going to be the biggest grading element for you. It's worth 150 points. That's close to a quarter of the grade, and there are some other grading elements associated to this group project, so it's even bigger. Than It's more like about a third of the grade, I think, really. You and 2 to 4 other classmates, depends upon the size of the class and how many groups I set up, will be assigned to study issues related to a minority group, that is some group, a diversity group in our society that is in one way or another outside of the mainstream in terms of the culture and in terms of equality and accessibility to everything. And so I will assign you to a group, and the 3 or 4, maybe 5 of you will split up that project basically, and present a paper together, one paper, one unified paper, not a paper that is like 3 or 4 separate papers that are just kind of bumped together and called one paper, but something that is formatted as a single paper. And so this paper is going to look at that group, what its history is, and what kind of special issues it faces in society. So this is sort of a diversity project that I think is really an important thing for people in social work. And again, if you've probably been exposed to diversity issues in other social work courses, but if not, this is a good place to start, because we have to be able to understand what goes on with individuals who belong to groups other than our own if we're going to be effective helpers. You will be given a group site. It's called, I think, your project group. It's not on your course menu yet, but when you are assigned to a group, it will appear magically in your course menu. And this will give you an opportunity to communicate with your fellow group members and discussion boards. You have a place where you can exchange files, maybe your rough drafts or articles you're finding related to your topic or something like that. There's a place for you to email your classmates. There's another place to assign tasks if you want to use that. Once that group site opens up, poke around a little bit and look at the different tools and figure out which ones you want to use. I can see in your group site, but nobody else in the class can, except for your group members. And incidentally, the assignments to groups are random in nature, and so I every now and then somebody says, please assign me to a group with so and so, and I just don't do it that way, because everybody's got somebody, and the best thing for me is just to assign groups randomly, and that's what I do. One thing that is not random that I will do, I'm going to wait 3 or 4 weeks until I put these groups together because I'll be scouting the roster to see if there are students who aren't really, putting themselves into the class much, who just kind of show up a little bit and don't show up for another 2 or 3 weeks. And those people I will try diligently to spread out among all the groups so that no one group is burdened with 3 people who don't want to do much work or something like that, or who are last minute people. And I, I will also say, if you're a procrastinator or if you're somebody who just has to do everything right away, both of you please try to work on those tendencies a little bit, because this is a group, and consider that there are people different from you that have different paces and different demands on them. So what I would tell you is, when your group is assigned, get in there right away and make contact with each other and be sure everybody has a way to get a hold of everybody else. Maybe start divvying up the work real quick, and then check back in every now and then with each other. But please don't wait to the last minute to get your work done, because it drives everybody else in the group crazy. And also, please don't expect everybody to stick with your very organized schedule so that everything is done week 1, week 2, week 3, because a lot of people aren't like that either. Okay. Now, one of the other elements related to group assignment are group check-ins, and this is intended. I set this up basically because there are people who just don't look in on their group, and it just seems like they don't realize that there's other people waiting to hear from them, and so these group check-ins are intended to make sure that you all connect with each other early, and again somewhere during the course of the semester, to make sure that you all are checking in to see what work is being done. And you get points, up to 20 points for each check-in. Now, I have to see your footprint in your group site in Blackboard, and many groups will find ways to contact each other outside of Blackboard. That's perfectly okay with me. I mean, texting or emailing or whatever it might be. Some students like to get together at Starbucks or something and compare notes that way, and that's all great if you're comfortable with that. But I can't grade based upon this. I can only grade upon what I see in Blackboard, and so whatever else you're doing outside of Blackboard, be sure that you're checking in Blackboard and leaving an imprint there so that I know you're working on things with your group members. And for the first check-in, I think the best thing you can do is, within the first week of your group assignment, get in there, make sure your fellow group members know your contact information, your phone number, your text number, your email address, how to reach you, so that you can communicate with each other reliably throughout the semester. So 40 points total. That's 2 check-in dates, which I'll give you at the time that the project is assigned, each worth 20 points. The other element related to your paper that contributes to your grade point, or your total points, is the discussion boards related to these papers. So you finish this project and you put it in your file exchange in your group site. I can get it there and I'll upload it and I'll read through it and I'll make my marginal comments like I always do in things, and put your grade on there, and then upload it back to your group site so that you have it to print out if you want. I'll also take a clean copy of your paper and I'll post it in the discussion board forum. And so everybody's papers, all the group's papers, and remember, this is one paper for each group. So there'd be probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 papers, I think probably 5, posted in this discussion board forum. And then during during a 2 or 3 week period, all of you should go in and read each other's papers and comment on it like in a discussion board, each paper. And this gives you an opportunity to see what other people have dug up in their research, and to consider what they're doing, and to think about it and comment on it as well, and as well as to have other students in the class benefit from your research. So good opportunity for interaction all around. This is a major portion of the course, as you can tell. There are only 2 tests. They're multiple choice tests. They are available in Blackboard. It will open up week 7 and week 15 on a Thursday, and each of those learning units will stay open for 11 days. And so 2 Sunday nights later, after it opens, the test will close and will no longer be available to you. So you must take the test in Blackboard at home, book by your side if you want. during those 11 days, because after that time it's not available anymore. Now, every time you take the test, and everybody who takes the test gets a different set of questions. And so there's a pool of questions that Blackboard draws from randomly for each student. And certainly there are questions that are going to repeat themselves from student to student, and but nobody's going to get the same test. So I trust you're going to do your own work anyway, but that's just sort of one of those safeguards, I think. The other thing is the test is timed, and so it will close. I think the first test closes in 90 minutes, I believe, and the second in 120. So, you can't start the test on Tuesday and find out what the questions are and then go do some research and come back on Friday and answer the questions. When you open it on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, Tuesday at 2:30, the test is done whether you close it or not. So you need to have read the material, and you need to have listened to the lectures before you take these tests. I mean, the tests aren't terribly hard or anything like that. But if you want to get a good score, I really recommend you read and listen to lectures when they're assigned. If you're not happy with the first score you get on that test, you can go back in. You don't have to come to me to get permission for it. You can go back in, take the test a second time, and the higher of your two scores is the one that will be recorded. So I'm trying to make this as user friendly as possible. But don't miss the closing date on the test. Additional discussion board questions here and there in weekly content will provide you with opportunities to earn up to 30 or maybe even 40 bonus points during the semester. When you open your Blackboard course, it opens to announcements. This is very similar to if I'm standing in front of the class at the beginning of the hour and I say, before we get started, there's something I need to make sure you know. That's what those announcements are. When I put an announcement in, it will send you an email to your university email address, and so you'll get that in an email as well. But when you come into the course, when you open up the course in Blackboard, check the announcements first. The new announcements should be on top. All the old ones will be below it, but the new ones, any new ones should be on top, and be sure that you've seen it and that you've read it. Another note for you here, if there are announcements appearing there that you haven't been getting in your email, then there's probably something wrong with your university email address, and you need to get with IT to see what's going on. It's your responsibility to be sure that your email address is functioning properly, because this is the primary way I can communicate with you outside the class. And sometimes there's things you're going to want to know. I think, in my own opinion, the weekly course content is the most important link, because that's where you're going to get all the lessons and all the materials and really so much of the work that I put together for you there. So be sure that you look at every slide every week when you get to there. And when you go into weekly course content, each Sunday morning a new week is going to turn up. You won't see next week's stuff until that Sunday morning, but last week's and the week before, all that will remain open and available to you. But new material will pop up every Sunday morning, and every week you should see at least these items in your weekly course content. The opening and closing slides are ones that I write, and so when you get to the closing slide and you see it's me writing again, you've kind of reached the end probably, but be sure you get to that end and you don't miss anything in between. I once had a student in an intro to sociology course at Kenai Peninsula College many years ago who told me he was just reading the first slide and didn't realize that there was more to be read, and his grade wasn't too good, as you might guess, and so I just can't stress this enough. Be sure you look at all the slides. And the other thing is, you can use that next button, I think, in the student view, to get to the next slide. But when you get to the discussion board link and you click on that response to readings, I think it actually takes you out of the learning unit. You respond to the discussion board, and I don't think there is a next button to go back into the learning unit. I think you have to use your browser back button and get back into the learning unit manually. And the same thing is true for the journal link, so just keep that in mind. I also do post my PowerPoint or Keynote slides for you that if you want to print them out, you can do that. You'll find them in a separate page there. It doesn't have audio, obviously, but they're there for you. And also, when the tests become available, they're going to open in your weekly course content right there in your class. So, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to be proctored to have anybody looking over your shoulder when you take the test. You can be right there at your phone or at your desk, wherever you do these things. I have been saying that I think for the vast majority of you who are in the traditional 18 to 22-year-old college student age range or thereabouts, you're digital natives and you understand that there are some hang-ups and issues with written communication, electronic communication, but some of the people my age or pushing that age, we had to learn all this stuff, because there weren't computers around when we were in college, and um, I still had I remember I graduated when I got an electric typewriter. Man, that was something, an electric typewriter. But anyway, um, when we communicate electronically, we don't have the capacity to read each other's facial expressions, to see our body language, to listen to the tone of voice, to see whether or not eye contact is being made. Things like sarcasm and humor, double entendres, those kinds of things don't always translate well in electronic communication, and so it's very possible to easily misunderstand what is being presented. And so when you write things, please be aware of that, and read what you have written with and understand all these things and see if there's anything there that might not be understood properly. Just do your best to make sure that you're writing clearly. If somebody has written something that's offensive to you, I'd say first of all, if at all possible, try to be forgiving, because it's likely they didn't mean to be offensive. Contact that person if you think you need to, but be respectful in doing that. If anybody is harassing you, being abusive or anything along those lines, please let me know and I'll deal with that and through the university. But I haven't run into that in any of my classes, and I don't expect it to happen here either. But please remember, other people read what you write. They have feelings. They come from all different walks of life, different groups, different religions, different races, different sexual orientations, different age groups, different abilities groups, and so on. So please be aware of that, and of course, never threaten or post comments that are derogatory about other people. There's an icebreaker here for you, and for the few of you who are doing two classes this semester with me, please don't write the same thing in both discussion boards. I'll notice it. And so you're going to have to come up with something original twice here. But I'd like for you to talk a little bit about yourself and just let us know who it is that's sitting behind that name on our computer and what's going on with you. And there are some suggestions here for you, but you can really write whatever you like about yourself. Um, I also encourage people to consider posting photographs, and this is not necessarily of yourself, although it's fine to post pictures of yourself as well. But of things you like, your pets, your friends, your family, anything like that, places you've been, whatever. I think sometimes pictures make our posts more interesting, but feel free to do that. And again, sometimes if you want to post a picture of yourself too, it's always nice to know the face that's behind the name. So this is your chance to, and remember, the other thing is you, after you made your original post by next Sunday night, you're going to go back in within the next few days and be sure you respond to a couple other posts. So this is your chance to welcome each other and to, identify commonalities you might have and those kinds of things. So original response plus 2 responses to classmates' posts, and that'll be that. There's no journal posting. There's no journal this week. You won't find one in the course content. It'll be available starting week 2. But start paying attention to the news and the media. And again, here are some ideas about some things you can look for that are all very relevant. But And again, for those of you taking the course, two courses, make it two different posts, please, not the same one in each class. I'll catch it. I will. I've done it in the past. Okay. So finally, here's a quote from Albert Schweitzer. And I always tell myself when I get to this slide, why didn't I look it up to see what he was? But I know he was a very well-known philosopher. I think he was some form of a anthropologist or something like this, but he was very involved in cultures. And when I was a little boy, he was one of these great thinkers of the world. And Albert Schweitzer said, the final decision as to what the future of a society shall be depends not on how near its organization is to perfection, but on the degrees of worthiness of its individual members. So this really kind of points back to us interacting with our society, and what we do to make the world better, and what we do to make our society whole and productive. And this is one of the things that I think social workers do, and one of the reasons that I found myself in the field. I didn't start out as a social work major, but as I started thinking about things more seriously in university life, that's where I wound up. And I hope, as I look back on my career, that the work that I did I know it had some impact on some lives individually. I hope that it had a larger impact upon the community and society as well. And I believe that you'll find over the years, as time goes on in this field, you're in the right profession if you want to contribute to the world around you. So with that closing thought, that will be it for this week and for this introductory lecture. Please let me know if any questions arise because of this, and otherwise I'll be checking in with you again next week. I hope that you find the material interesting as you begin to work through this process, and well, we'll be in touch. Take care.